Welcome to this brief video tour of the aircraft from England, from the United Kingdom, simulated in Linux Air Combat. They have a goodly array of aircraft, commencing with this Avro Lancaster. Its historic role was a strategic or heavy bomber, and as you can see, this is a 4-engine heavy bomber. With a top speed of 260 miles per hour, it's not very fast. With a climb rate of 1,100 feet per minute, as a heavy bomber, that's respectable, but it's not going to be able to climb away from any pursuing fighters. It was available throughout World War II and is considered an early World War II aircraft. Its maneuverability is poor, and as a heavy bomber, that's what you get. Its durability, though, is excellent. This aircraft is big and strong, and it can absorb a lot of bullets. It takes a lot of sustained firing to bring one of these big boys down. If you're piloting this and there's one fighter after you, you have a good chance of surviving. It's armed with 8 lightweight 30 caliber machine guns, so it's not that tough at defending itself, but its main virtue is it can lug 28 500-pound bombs. It has a great deal of destructive capacity. It's the second most destructive bomber in the war. It wasn't until the end of the war that America built the amazing B-29 Superfortress that any aircraft could lug that many bombs. This was the heaviest hitting bomber throughout most of the war. If one of these is after your airfield, you better take it seriously and you better stop it. This is entirely capable of destroying your entire airfield without having to land and refuel and rearm. The artwork, I did this, derived it from a combination of pieces from other aircraft. It isn't that great. I wish I had help from somebody making a better 3DS model of this historically important Avro Lancaster heavy bomber. Next, we have the de Havilland Mosquito bomber. The Mosquito came in various versions. We only model the pure bomber version, which was historically the most important one, I think. Its historic role then was as a tactical or medium bomber. With a top speed of 415 miles per hour, this baby is fast. In fact, when it was designed early on in the war, it was considered so fast that it was not deemed necessary to give it any armament because it could just run away from any of the fighters of its day. Even by the end of the war, this thing could run away from most fighters. With a climb rate of 2,850 feet per minute, it's a pretty good climber, too. It's considered a late war aircraft. Its maneuverability is good for a bomber, and it could be considered a fighter bomber. Its durability was average. That is, other variants could be considered fighter bombers. Ours is unarmed. Armament, this is the bomber version. It carries 8 500-pound bombs, but no guns, relying on its high speed for defense. If you get hit by 8 500-pound bombs, though, you are going to notice. This can destroy an airfield. This can sink a battleship. This is a very powerful, high-speed aircraft, and it's a great asset to whoever uses it. The artwork was done by Blake Williams. Blake spent a lot of time perfecting this. Interestingly, this airplane was made out of wood. By the time the Japanese designed this airplane, their industry was in bad shape. They were subject to naval blockades by the German U-boats. They didn't have a good supply of metals, and so they made these out of wood. They chopped down forests. They repurposed a lot of their furniture and piano-making factories and cranked these things out. The British people loved to admire this airplane, and it said that it was built like a fine piece of furniture. It was a beautiful airplane. Next we have the Hawker Hurricane. It was a much better looking airplane than this model. I made this 3DS model and it doesn't look very good. I'd love to get some help making a more realistic looking Hawker Hurricane. Its historic role was as a fighter. This was the primary and most important fighter during the Battle of Britain. Although historians tend to glory in the famous Supermarine Spitfire, which is a prettier airplane, it was actually the Hawker Hurricane that carried the bulk of the battle and the victory of the Battle of Britain. With a top speed of 340 miles per hour, it's average for a fighter. With a climb rate of 2,780 feet per minute, it's average or maybe a little below average for fighters, but for an early war airplane, it was pretty decent. Its maneuverability is very good. This is a fun airplane to fly because it turns great. Its durability is good. It's armed with 4 20-millimeter hard-hitting cannons. So this has a heavy-duty punch, and it can lug as many as 2 500-pound bombs. The Brits used this throughout the war. It was particularly important early on in the war, and I only wish we had a better, prettier model of this for Linux Air Combat. Somebody help me out here, please. Next, we have the Hawker Tempest, and likewise, it needs a prettier 3DS model. This airplane wasn't quite that ugly looking. This is not a handsome airplane by any regard, but that artwork is kind of primitive. I created this artwork, and I know somebody could do better for me. Its historic role was as a fighter bomber. Look at that speed, 432 miles per hour. This is a very powerful inline water-cooled engine. And it's fast. 430 miles per hour makes this guy really fast. It can climb at 4,700 feet per minute. So it's a great climber and a fast airplane with great performance from late World War II. Its maneuverability is good. It doesn't roll that great, but it turns decently. Its durability is good. It's armed with 4 hard-hitting 20-millimeter cannons, and it can carry 2 500-pound bombs and 8 rockets. A versatile general-purpose airplane that was good in ground attack and bombing. A decent fighter, very powerful in the climb and fast. This is a good airplane. If you are trying to get away from this thing, it will run you down like a dog on the highway. Next, we have the Hawker Typhoon. Another one where I made the model and it doesn't look that good. I wish I could get somebody to help me out making better looking Hawker aircraft. Its historic role was as a fighter bomber. With a top speed of 412 miles per hour, this thing is fast. With a climb rate of 2,740 feet per minute, it's respectable. Not stellar, but good enough. It's a late World War II fighter with average maneuverability and good durability, armed with 4 hard-hitting 20-millimeter cannon. It could carry 8 rockets and 2 bombs. So this is a very powerful and important fighter bomber. Next, we have the famous Supermarine Spitfire. We modeled 2 versions of the Spitfire. This is the Spitfire Mark V. The 3DS model here was found on the internet in the public domain. I don't know who created it. I would love to credit the designer because they did a great job. Look at the beautiful curves on this airplane. It's often regarded as the most beautiful single-engine fighter ever made. We modeled 2 versions of this. This is the Mark V with a top speed of 371 miles per hour. Early on in the war, that was great performance. By the late war period, that's not very fast. It could climb, though, at 3,200 feet per minute, which is decent during any period of the war. Its maneuverability is very, very good. This airplane is a lot of fun to fly. Beginners love this airplane. Its durability is average. It's armed with 2 20-millimeter cannons and 4 30-millimeter machine guns. Although that's kind of a lightweight load for machine guns, those 2 20-millimeter cannons make up for it. This is a hard-hitting airplane. This was the primary opponent of the German Me-109 Messerschmitt during the early phases of the Battle of Britain. This is a famous airplane, and British culture admires this airplane for obvious reasons. Just look how beautiful this thing is. Next, we have its bigger brother, the Spitfire Mark IX, with a beefier engine. Its historic role is also as a fighter. Its top speed has been raised all the way up to 415 miles per hour, so this is a fast airplane. It can climb at 3,860 feet per minute, which is entirely respectable, almost on a par with the highest performing World War II aircraft. Its maneuverability is very good, its durability is average, and it's armed with 4 30 caliber lightweight machine guns supplemented by 2 hard-hitting 20-millimeter cannon. Take this airplane seriously. The Brits did manufacture later models of the Spitfire. The Mark 16 is not modeled by Linux Air Combat. It wasn't that produced in that many numbers. This is the definitive Spitfire, the Mark 9. And what a beautiful airplane this is. Again, the 3DS model was done by some unknown person on the internet. I found it in the public domain. I would love to credit the designer of this beautiful 3DS model. The lines and curves of the Spitfire are just a work of art. That concludes the British aircraft in of Linux Air Combat.